Right. Egypt is our second largest military aid client. They receive billions in military aid every year.
Number one is?
And number one is Israel. And those two go together, actually, and together account for the lion's share of United States military aid. Egypt, as a relatively wealthy country, also purchases millions of dollars in U.S. manufactured weaponry every year. And so it's a very valuable client and actually pays for U.S. weaponry, unlike many other countries that purchase it with loans that the United States then writes off regularly. I mean, the whole specter of Egyptian elections is kind of like Iraqi elections or elections in Saudi Arabia, where no one is really voting. The whole idea of democracy there is a complete fiction, and yet it makes President Bush look good. And then the State Department might change its classification, but right now it's listed as an autocratic, undemocratic regime.
Very quickly, Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia is also a huge recipient of military aid. We have a bargain with them to allow the United States to remain, have a military base there and carry out operations from Saudi Arabia. And so we pay for that with foreign military financing.
We're talking to Frida Berrigan. She wrote the report, U.S. Weapons at War, as a senior research fellow at the World Policy Institute. And as we wrap up this week and today's show, we thought we'd go down to Baltimore, to your home, Frida, where you were just a few days ago, to Jonah House. For the return home of Sister Carol Gilbert, one of three women, one of three nuns, who several years ago hammered on warheads in Colorado protesting the invasion of Iraq. Were sentenced to a number of years in prison. She's just come out of prison now and joins us on the phone from your home, Carol Gilbert, and Frida Berrigan's home. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you, Amy.
It's good to have you with us. We played a clip when you came out of jail on Monday, but wanted to ask about the controversy around Jonah House and the questions that were raised about you being allowed to return to your home after you served out your prison sentence.
That's correct, Amy. I understand I have two probation officers, one in Maryland and one in Colorado. The problem with Maryland is that they did not want me to return to Jonah House and be living with felons, and there's the question of restitution. And it's clear that the war-making continues, and I will not pay any money, any kind of restitution, and so therefore my travel, it appears, at least for the next 3 years, could be that I cannot travel outside the state of Maryland. We have done alternative restitution in that we've collected in our names over $120,000 to all kinds of wonderful charitable organizations and social justice organizations, and each of us has made our own contribution to the work of the prison in the sense that I made over 25 pairs of mittens and sweaters and that for the poor of Alderson. Whether or not the judge will accept that remains to be seen.
Can you explain briefly what it is you did?
On the morning of October 6, 2002, the three of us entered a Minuteman III missile silo in northern Colorado to inspect, expose, and symbolically disarm this weapon. We were trying to prevent the war in Iraq and felt that under international law we have a responsibility to try to draw attention and to show the world that these are our weapons of mass destruction, and for that the government chose to charge us with felonies similar to a sabotage charge.
You had a well-known inmate with you at Alderson, Martha Stewart. Did you come to know her?
I did come to know Martha very well, and I think she totally understands now the injustice of the system, and hopefully will continue to speak out and work to see that the system really needs to collapse. We're not even sure it can be reformed at this point.
And you're feeling, having spent that time in jail protesting the war, to find that that it's still going on. It's still the resistance is stronger than ever, and the determination of President Bush to continue prosecuting this war seems to be stronger than ever.
Absolutely. Just, in fact, what I would say is even clearer to me is just as the war continues on the international front and the corruption of the corporations such as Halliburton, we have the same thing happening on the domestic scene, only in this country it's the prisons and the corruption and the illegalities of Unicor, and so many things go on in the prisons. So we've got prisons in this country and war on the international scene, and both soldiers and prisoners are disposable people.
And on the issue of Martha Stewart, since she could have such tremendous impact if she spoke out around prison conditions, did she express an opinion on the occupation in Iraq?
Martha is totally against the war in Iraq. There's no question about it. And I think we need to understand that Martha is still under house arrest right now, and so she still is very limited by what she is allowed to do and not do by this government.
I want to thank you very much for joining us, Sister Carol Gilbert.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Speaking to us from her home in Jonah House, and Frida Berrigan of World Policy Institute. That does it for the show. Democracy Now!